We continue now at the top of Daf Ayin Chesam and Beis Mesechet Sanhedrin. This is Sanhedrin Daf 78b. On the previous summer, there was a machlokas tanoim in the Mishnah. Let's say I have a situation where a person strikes another person, and originally the Bezdin says that this person is going to die, but then the person gets a little better, the victim gets a little better, and the Bezdin reassesses and says that the victim is actually going to live, and then it happens that the victim actually does die. So the question is, if the person who struck him, is he liable or not? And this is the machlokas in the Mishnah between the Chachamim and Reb Nechemia. The Chachamim say he is liable because originally the Bezdin did assess that he was going to die, the victim would die, and that's actually what happened. The fact that they changed the assessment in the middle, it does not make a difference. But Reb Nechemia disagrees. Reb Nechemia says the fact that they reassessed and said he was going to live, so we assume that what he died from was something else, and therefore the person is exempt. And the Gemara is in the middle of bringing a brisa with Reb Nechemia's source. The pasuk says, "Im yokom v'salech b'chutz al mishanto v'niko hamak." Somebody was struck, but then he gets better. He walks al mishanto on his staff, and he seems to have been healed. And so then, in that situation, we say that he's not liable to the death penalty. We simply say that in that case he has to pay money, as the pasuk goes on to say, "Rak shivto yitein v'rapo yirapeh." He has to pay for the lost work. He has to pay for his healing. And so the brisa now continues, "V'chisale al daitcha shezeh mahalech b'shuk." Would anyone think? Would it occur to you that this person is walking around in the marketplace, v'zen narag, and this person that struck him is going to be killed? Why would he get the death penalty if the victim never died? Ella, rather, zesha amdu lamisa. This is exactly the case we had in the Mishnah. The cases where they evaluated him that he was going to die from being struck, but then he got better, and therefore they reassessed and they said he's actually going to live. But then it got worse, and he did die. Shehu pater. So Nechemia says that's what the pasuk is actually saying, that in this situation, rak shivto yitein v'rapo yirape, we say that in this situation there is no death penalty, he is exempt. And so the Gemara continues v'Rabbanan. So now, according to the Rabbanan, hai v'niko hamake my darshibe. What do they do with this pasuk of v'niko hamake, that we say that the person who struck him is going to be innocent? And the Gemara says, melamed, according to the Rabbanan, this pasuk teaches shechov shenoso, that they have to imprison him because they have to wait to see what exactly is going to happen. Rashi explains, v'Rabbanan hai v'niko hamake melamed shechov shenoso, meaning im amdu lamisa. Let's say they did estimate that the person was going to die, the victim was going to die. Chov shen es hamake. So what it means is that we have to imprison the person who struck him, shelo yivrach, that he shouldn't run away, ad shenira im yamasam lav, because we have to see, will this person die or not? Lahachi asi v'niko hamake. That's what it means, v'niko hamake. Demashma likasha yakum v'niko. What it means is when he gets better, so then we'll say that he's an innocent. Michlal dad hashta chavashu. That implies that until now he was imprisoned. And the Gemara continues, Rabbi Nechemia. Now, according to Rabbi Nechemia, chavisha menole, where does he have a source for chavisha that we would imprison the person again in a situation where we estimate that the victim is going to die, so we don't want him to run away? Where does he learn this concept of chavisha from? Yolif mi mekoshesh. He learns it from the case of the mekoshesh. That's the person who violated Shabbos by gathering the wood. So in that case, it says in the pasuk, as Rashi says, Yolif mi mekoshesh dechsiv. It's written by Yanichu oso b'mishmar. It says that they had to imprison him because they had to determine exactly what to do. And so we learn from there this idea of chavisha. That's what Rabbi Nechemia says. And the Gemara says, V'Rabbanan nami le'elfi mi mekoshesh. But the Rabbanan also, why can't they just learn from mekoshesh? And the Gemara says, no, mekoshesh bar ketalahu. The mekoshesh, actually, everybody knew that he was liable to the death penalty. Moshe lo havayoda katle b'mayit. It was just that Moshe Rabbeinu didn't know what particular death penalty it was. And so therefore, that's totally different than our case. La'fuke hai, that excludes our case. Dolo yadinoni bar ketalahu ilav bar ketalahu. In our case, we're talking about imprisoning someone that we don't even know whether he's liable to the death penalty or not. And that's why you're not able to learn from Mekoshesh. Rashi explains, Mekoshesh bar Katalu, Pshita le Moshe de bar Katalu. In the case of the Mekoshesh, it was obvious to Moshe Rabbeinu that this person was liable to the death penalty. Kedaisi lekaman bebraisa. We're about to bring this in a braisa. Yodea haya Moshe Rabbeinu sham Mekoshesh b'misa. That Moshe Rabbeinu knew the Mekoshesh gets the death penalty. Sharik var nemer v'tor mechalam mos yumos. It says, those who desecrate Shabbos, they will surely be put to death. Avaloha yodea be'ezu misa yumos. He didn't know which particular death penalty. And Rashi continues and notes, Rabbanan svira lahu, the Rabbanan hold, commando amr, like the one who says, Lo ba'inan sheyodiyu basra'asa, that we don't need to let him know when we warn the person be'eza misa nerag, with what particular death penalty he's going to get. And that's why, again, the Mekoshesh was able to be given the death penalty. And the Gemara continues for Rabbi Nechemia. Now, according to Rabbi Nechemia, he also will have the same problem that the Rabbanan have of learning from the Mekoshesh, because again, the Mekoshesh was a situation where they knew for certain that there was going to be a death penalty, they just didn't know which one. So therefore, the Gemara now says, Rabbi Nechemia, actually, he doesn't learn the idea of chavisha from Mekoshesh. Rather, yolef mi megadef. He's going to learn from the case of the megadef, the blasphemer. In that case, the lo have a yod. In that case, it was a situation where he did not know, Moshe Rabbeinu did not know, ibar ketalu, whether or not there was a death penalty at all. V'chavshuhu, and they imprisoned him, and that's where Ibn Nechemia is going to learn the idea of chavisha. And the Gemara says, why can't the Rabbanan learn from Megadef? The Rabbanan will respond to that. Megadef horas shah haisa. The Megadef was a ruling that could only apply at that time. It's not something that we could learn to other situations. And Rashi explains the lohayo deya ibar ketalahu ilo. Again, by the Megadef, Moshe Rabbeinu did not know if there was a death penalty or not. Kidim efarsh l'kamon, as the Gemara is about to explain. Aval Megadef lo nemar bo el lefarish. Again, by the Megadef, that was not known. And the Rabbanan will respond that you can't learn from Megadef because horas shah haisa, that was a ruling only for that time. Ilo kasav chavisha dehacha, if you wouldn't have imprisonment written over here in our case, mechavisha dehasam lo have a gamin, and you can't learn from the Megadef by Moshe Rabbeinu the horas shah haisa, because that was just a ruling for that time. Sharei lo nitztavu mitchila alosa chavisha, they weren't originally instructed to imprison him in that situation. Umayatzma masu, they did that on their own. The cave into lo nemar bo misa, because if it was never stated a death penalty mitchila from the outset, ma safek hayolahem lahatal of safek misa lechofsha. What reason, what doubt did they even have to decide that there might be a reason to put him to death and to imprison him? And therefore, according to the Rabbanan, you cannot learn from a horas shah. And the Gemara continues, Kidatanya, it's like we learned in a Braisa. This is in terms of the difference between the Mekoshesh and the Megadef. It says in the Braisa, Yodea haya Moshe Rabbeinu sham Mekoshesh b'misa. Moshe Rabbeinu knew that the one who gathered wood, that there was a death penalty, shenemar, as it says in the Pasuk, Mechalaleh mos yumas, those who desecrate Shabbos will surely die. Elalo hayodea be'ezu misa nerag, he just didn't know which death penalty he was going to be killed with. Shenemar, like it says in the Pasuk, Ilo Porash. That's what the Pasuk means when it says it wasn't clear. Aval Megadef, but by the blasphemer, lo nemar bo ela lefarish lem al pi Hashem. There, the Pasuk says lefarish lem al pi Hashem. Shelo haya Moshe yodea, because Moshe Rabbeinu didn't know imhu ben misa kol ikarim lav, whether there was a death penalty at all. And the Gemara continues, B'shlam al Reb Nechemia. Now I understand, according to Reb Nechemia, who's learning from this pasuk that we quoted above, learning this exact halach of the Mishnah, that in a situation where they originally say he's going to die, then they reassess and say he's going to get better, and then he dies. Reb Nechemia learns from the pasuk of Im Yakum Misalech Bachutz, that if he gets up and he's able to walk, that in such a situation, Reb Nechemia learns out potter. So then I understand, Hainu Dechsivi Trei Umdani. That's why in this pasuk it talks about two different scenarios where they assess whether he's going to live or die. Chad amdu lemisa v'chaya. The pasuk is talking about two cases. The pasuk is first referring to a situation where they originally say he's going to die and then he actually lives, and the pasuk is saying that in that situation the person doesn't get the death penalty. V'chad, and then there's also another scenario, the one we just said above, amdu lemisa, where they originally say he's going to die. V'hakam limay shahaya, then he gets better and then he ends up dying. In that case also, Reb Nechemia says the person is potter, there's no death penalty. But the Gemara continues, Rabbanan, but according to the Rabbanan, Trei Umdani Lamali, why is it that the pasuk has to mention two situations where they estimate? And the Gemara says, Chad amdu lemisa v'chaya. One again is the same we said above, that they estimate that he's going to die and then he lives. In that case, the person does not get the death penalty. V'chad amdu l'chayim v'meis. And then the other scenario is, let's say they estimate originally that he's going to live and then he ends up dying. In that case also, the person is potter, the person is exempt, and that's what we learn from the pasuk. And the Gemara says, Reb Nechemia, now Reb Nechemia will respond to that. Why don't we need a pasuk for amdu l'chayim v'meis? He says amdu l'chayim v'meis lo tzarich. You don't even need a pasuk for a case where they originally say he's going to live and then he's going to die. That's obvious that the person is exempt. Sharei yotza mi bezdin zakoi, because the person left bezdin innocent. We're not going to bring him back and say guilty in such a situation. And Rashi explains, B'shlam Reb Nechemia, it's good according to Reb Nechemia, Damar v'niko hamake, because again, Reb Nechemia says that the part of the pasuk which says v'niko hamake, liamdu l'misa v'hekel v'chazer v'hichbid, that's again for that scenario where they originally say he's going to die, he gets better, and then he does die. Also, that's what he uses for that part of the pasuk. Hainu dechsivi trei kra yiseiru l'umdana. That's why there are two parts of the pasuk that are extra for various cases of umdana. Dim bol l'amdeinu shachova b'chaver chayev b'ripoy v'sheves. Now, it can't simply be teaching us that somebody who wounds his friend is chayav to pay for the medical bills and to pay for the lost work, kedemasik shivto yitain, like the pasuk says shivto yitain, because if that was all it was saying, nichtov v'hiko esreo be'eveno be'egro v'naval l'mishkav shivto yitain v'rapo yirape. It should simply say if a person strikes his friend and he's injured, so then you have to pay sheves and ripoy. V'lo yamus yiseiru l'medrash. So you have v'lo yamus is really extra for a drasha. V'cheinim yakom v'salich b'chutz, and then there's another extra phrase of im yakom v'salich b'chutz. Those are the two extra phrases that we need to explain. And the Gemara continues, Tanu Rabbanon, the rabbis taught, Hamakes chaveiro v'amdu lamisa, if somebody strikes his friend, and they originally estimate that the person is going to die from that wound, v'choya, and then he lives, potrinoso, so in that case we say he's exempt, as we just said above, amdu lamisa v'hakal mima shahaya. Let's say they originally estimate that he's going to die, and then he gets better. Omdinoso omed sheni, so then they're going to do a second estimate, they're going to reassess and determine that he's actually going to live, l'maman, and they have to do that second assessment, because now the person is going to have to pay monetary damages. And if after that hichbid v'meis, he gets worse and he dies, halach achar omed hoim tzoi, we actually follow that middle assessment that he was going to live and he's potter. Divrei Reb Nechemia, these are the words of Reb Nechemia, and again that's consistent with Reb Nechemia in our Mishnah. But the Chachamim say ein omed achar omed, we don't take the estimate after the estimate seriously, rather we go by that first estimate. In this particular case, again, they originally said he was going to die, and he did die, and therefore according to the Chachamim, the person who killed him is liable. And the Gemara continues, Tanya Idach, we have another brisa that says as follows, Amdu Lamisa, originally they say he's going to die, Omden Oso L'chaim. So if originally they say he's going to die, we are able to do a reassessment to say that he's going to live. But L'chaim, but let's say they originally assessed that he's going to live, Ein Omden Oso Lamisa. At that point in time, we can't then reassess and say he's going to die in order to make the person liable for killing him. Amdu Lamisa, now let's say they originally assessed that he's going to die, and then he gets better. So omdenoso omed sheni l'mammon, like we just said, at that point you're able to omdenoso l'chaim, you can reassess for life. So you do a second assessment in terms of how much money is owed. Now if afterwards he gets worse and he dies, mishalim nezek v'tzar l'yorshim, so he has to pay the damages and the pain to the heirs, and it doesn't just mean nezek tzar, it means ripoy, sheves, boshes as well. All of those payments, monetary payments, have to be paid. And the brisa says, now, from what point in time do you make that assessment? Meaning, at what point in time do you determine how much monetary damage was caused? You actually make the estimate from the moment that he struck him. You don't do it from right now, where already at this point in time he was getting a little better, but you make that assessment of how much monetary damage was done at the moment that he struck him. And the Gemara comments, Ustamik Reb Nechemia. Now, this unattributed brisa is following Reb Nechemia, because again, this brisa is saying that in a situation where they originally determined that he's going to die, but then they reassess and they say he's going to live, even if afterwards he dies, all the person is liable is monetary damage. He is not put to death. He's not liable to the death penalty, like Reb Nechemia says. And Rashi explains, from what point in time do we determine in terms of how much is the monetary payment? In a situation where he gets a little bit better, and so now you're making this assessment in terms of monetary damages. So from what moment do you determine that? And the answer is Misha Sheiko, from the time that he struck him. Meaning Omden, we have to evaluate as follows. Kama hayayafa kodim haka, how much was he worth before he was struck? The Kama hayayafa acharakan, how much was he worth after he was struck? And at that point in time, it was much worse. He went to a situation where they even thought he was going to die. V'lo amrin, we don't say hoel v'yad hashta lo amdinon le elo lamisa, since until now they were thinking he was going to die. V'hashta hu damdinon le lamaman, and now we're reassessing. We're saying there's a monetary damage. So nemdoi kedekoi hashta, maybe we should evaluate him like he is right now. Varehukal, now he's gotten a little better. Umefasdinon le lanizik, and so then it's going to be a loss to the nizik. That we don't do. Again, we go by the moment, by the time that he struck him. And Rashi continues, Ustamik Reb Nechemia v'hach stamik Reb Nechemia. Again, this unattributed brisa is following Reb Nechemia mukcha de pater leimi misa, who says again that he's exempt from the death penalty, even though the victim ultimately did die. But we say again, the person is exempt from the death penalty because there was an assessment investment that he was going to be able to survive. And the Gemara continues with the Mishnah, Niskavin laharoges habeim. Let's say a person has intention to kill an animal, v'haroges adam, and then he kills a person. La'ovid kol chavim, he has intention to kill an idol worshiper, a non-Jew. V'haroges Yisrael, then he kills a Jew. L'nefalim, he has intention to kill a nefel. A nefel is a baby that's not viable, it's going to die anyway. He wouldn't be liable to the death penalty for that. V'haroges ben kayama, but then he kills somebody who is viable, who is able to live, and so there is a death penalty. But in all of these cases, the original intention was to kill someone, or to kill an animal, to kill in a way where there was no death penalty. So pater, since that was his original intention, that's not what happened in the end. But since that was his original intention, we say pater, the person is exempt. Neskaving lahakoso al masnav, let's say he wants to strike him on his loins. And it's not enough to kill him al masnav. If he struck him on his loins, it would not be enough to kill him. But then he ended up striking him on his heart. And it was enough to kill him by striking him on his heart. And the person does die. Pater, in that case also, he is exempt because that wasn't his intention. He wanted to strike him on the loins. Now, if his intention was to strike him on his heart, and Rashi explains, he intended to kill an animal. A person was standing by an animal. He wanted to kill the animal. Instead, he killed the person. Pater, he's exempt. Because at the time of the warning, that's a warning given out of doubt. Even though he accepted the warning. I know this person is a person of the covenant, is a Jewish person, and I understand that if I kill him, I'm going to be chayav the death penalty. Pater, he's still exempt. Because maybe he won't kill him in such a situation. Again, this is a case where he's intending on killing an animal. And then also, when it comes to a nefel, that's a baby that's not viable, you're also not liable to the death penalty, because it's as if it already is dead. And we will continue with this discussion in the next video on Daf Ayin Tes Amud Aleph.